When his palm landed across my cheek, the room froze. His family didn't gasp, didn't rush to help. They just stared at me as if I was the shame. That night, I swore they'd all learn who the real disgrace was.
Hello, if you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and tap the notification bell. Type in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as touching as this one, or maybe even crazier. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's begin.
The slap hadn't happened yet, not in this chapter of my life, but its shadow already loomed over me. Some nights I could still feel the phantom sting at his hands from years past, the bruises I had hidden beneath makeup, the whispers I silenced with excuses. No one knew the full story, and that was exactly how Charles liked it. He was the millionaire with the polished smile, the generous donor, the charming son every mother dreamed of. I was the outsider, the black woman they whispered about, tolerated, but never embraced. My name is Amara Jacobs, and if there's one thing life has taught me, it's that silence can be heavier than screams. I worked now as a community arts coordinator in a modest neighborhood, organizing mural projects for teenagers who carried their own scars. My days were simple: paint-streaked hands, loud laughter from kids who didn't yet know the world's cruelty, and evenings spent alone in a quiet apartment that still felt too big. It wasn't the life of luxury I had once known, but it was mine. And unlike those gilded halls, here, at least, I was free. Still, memories had a way of creeping back. The smell of Charles's cologne lingering in an elevator, a headline about one of his real estate ventures, a sleek car passing by that reminded me of the nights I sat quietly while he placed reckless bets over the phone, my stomach tight with fear that we'd lose everything, even though he could always buy it back with a single call. What they never saw, what his family would never admit, was that their perfect son was rotting from the inside. His addiction to high-stakes gambling was an illness, a hunger that drained his spirit. I managed it. I covered for him. I made the calls from furious lenders at midnight, made sure debts were paid, excused his absences with believable lies. I was his shield, and yet in the end, I was branded the problem. Charles, of course, thrived in the spotlight. Even now, across the city, he was sitting at a mahogany bar in one of his private clubs, laughing too loudly at a story he'd already told twice, glass in hand, eyes scanning the room for anyone worth impressing. The people surrounding him didn't notice the shake in his hands when the drinks weren't steady, didn't notice how he slipped away every hour to check his phone for betting updates, didn't notice, or didn't care, that his empire was slowly bleeding at the edges. Why would they? He was Charles Remington, heir to the Remington fortune, a man so gilded with wealth that cracks in his foundation were painted over with gold. But cracks had a way of widening. That night, as I cleaned paintbrushes in the community center sink, my phone buzzed with an email. The subject line froze me in place. Remington Foundation Charity Gala. Invitation. At first I thought it was some cruel mistake. Why would they invite me back into that world? The very family who had dismissed me as if I were nothing but a stain on their legacy. The same people who had stood by in silence when Charles's temper bruised me, if they ever even suspected. But as I opened it, I understood. It wasn't a personal invitation, it was a community invitation. The foundation was sponsoring art programs, and my organization had been chosen to showcase our work, which meant I would be there, which meant Charles would be there, which meant his family would be there too. My hands trembled as water dripped from the brushes. The past I had worked so hard to escape was circling back, dragging me toward a stage I never wanted to stand on again. And yet, somewhere in the pit of my stomach, there was a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not despair, something sharper, something like fire. Maybe this was the moment fate had been saving for me. Meanwhile, Across the city, Charles leaned back in his leather chair as his sister Victoria called him. "Are you even prepared for the gala?" she asked. Her tone clipped, as though she had been holding the family together while he played the charming son. "Relax," Charles drawled, swirling the ice in his glass. "It's just another night to prove we're untouchable. What could possibly go wrong?" What indeed? By the time I set down the invitation, my reflection in the window looked different. Not broken, not small, just waiting. The worlds we had built apart were about to collide, and for the first time in years, I wasn't the one trembling. As Amara stared at the invitation, her stomach twisting between fear and fire, I have to pause and ask you something. If you were in her place, invited back into a room filled with the people who once judged and humiliated you, would you go or would you walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to see how you'd handle it.
The night of the Remington Foundation Gala smelled like roses and money. The ballroom glittered under chandeliers, the kind of light that made diamonds sparkle louder than voices. Servers glided between tables with champagne flutes, and a string quartet played something elegant that only the rich seemed to enjoy. I stood at the entrance in a simple but elegant black dress, nothing flashy, nothing loud, yet I felt their eyes on me. Their whispers slid across the polished floor, subtle but sharp enough to cut. "That's her? She came back? After everything? Poor thing, she still thinks she belongs here." My chest tightened, but I kept walking. I hadn't come to belong. I had come because I was invited, because my art program mattered, and maybe because some part of me needed to look this world in the face again. Across the room, I saw him. Charles Remington. Perfectly tailored tuxedo, smile so polished it could blind. He held court in the center of a group, telling a story too loudly, his hand gripping a glass already half empty. People laughed. They always laughed, even when the joke wasn't funny, because wealth makes everything sound clever. But when his eyes found me, the smile faltered, just for a second. Then he laughed louder, as though daring me to flinch. I didn't. I mingled, forcing polite conversation with benefactors curious about the youth art program. Every word felt like I was walking barefoot across shards of glass. But I smiled. My students' faces flashed in my mind. This gala funding could mean supplies, mentors, opportunities. I wouldn't let my personal history steal their chance. Then it happened. I was speaking to a board member when Charles approached. His smile was painted on, but his eyes were sharp, drunk with something more than alcohol. "Amara," he said smoothly, though his voice carried venom only I could hear. "Back from the shadows, are we?" I swallowed hard, refusing to shrink. "Just here to represent the program, that's all." He leaned closer, his breath hot with whiskey. "You think you can just stroll in and act like you're not the embarrassment of this family?" I froze. The board member shifted uncomfortably, sensing tension but saying nothing. Charles's hand twitched at his side, that familiar gesture I once feared in the privacy of our home. I prayed he wouldn't. Surely he wouldn't. Not here. Not now. But before I could move, his palm cracked against my cheek. The sound echoed. The ballroom stopped. For a heartbeat, the ballroom was nothing but silence. Dozens of eyes fixed on me, not him. His family, his mother with her perfect pearls, his sister with her cold stare, watched, lips pressed tight. No one gasped. No one moved. I wasn't the wife anymore. I wasn't family. I was just the outsider, the shame. Heat surged at my face, not just from the sting, but from the humiliation. I stood frozen, my heart thundering in my ears. Charles straightened his tuxedo jacket, looking around as though daring anyone to challenge him. No one did. That was the moment something in me shifted. The years of silence, of bruises hidden, of lies told for his sake, they collapsed into ash. I had nothing left to lose. And for the first time, I saw clearly. His family didn't protect me. They didn't even see me, but they would.
Not tonight, but soon. I excused myself, my voice steady, though my hands trembled. I said, "If you'll excuse me," to no one in particular. Then I turned and walked away, every step carrying me farther from the woman who once endured. Behind me, the whispers rose, about me, about him, about what they had just seen. And somewhere inside, beneath the shame, a flame caught fire. This wouldn't end the way they thought.
I left the ballroom that night with my cheek burning and my pride in pieces. My heels clicked too loudly on the marble floor, as if they were announcing my shame to anyone still watching. The city air outside hit cold and sharp, but it didn't clear the fog in my chest. I had been here before, his hands on me, my silence swallowing the pain. But this time, it was different. This time, the world had seen. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. Instead, I went home. My apartment welcomed me with its quiet, but the silence mocked me too. I dropped my clutch on the counter and stared at myself in the mirror. Red blossomed across my cheek. My eyes shimmered with tears I refused to let fall. For years, I had been the keeper of Charles's secrets, his addiction, his violence, his endless hunger for control. I had shielded him from the world, and in return, he had broken me piece by piece. And tonight, he had stripped the last shred of dignity I had left in front of the people who already despised me. I wanted revenge. But could I do it? My phone buzzed. It was Naomi, my best friend. Her voice came through sharp and worried. "Amara, I heard. One of the gala staff leaked a video. It's already online." My stomach dropped. "What?" "It's everywhere. Social feeds, blogs. They're spinning it against you, Amara, saying you provoked him, that you've always been unstable. His family's machine is already working overtime." I closed my eyes, swallowing back bile. Of course, they couldn't let their golden boy look like the villain. No, better to paint me as the bitter ex-wife who couldn't let go. "Amara," Naomi said softly, "let it go. Please, don't fight them. You'll only get hurt worse." Her words cut deeper than she meant. Part of me wanted to agree, to crawl back into silence, lick my wounds, and let the world forget. That had always been my role. Carry his sins quietly, vanish when necessary. But another part of me, new, dangerous, alive, recoiled at the thought. "No," I whispered. "What?" "I said no, Naomi, not this time." My voice trembled, but my resolve was forming like iron beneath it. He humiliated me, again, and this time, everyone saw. You think I should let him keep walking around untouchable while I hide? No, not anymore. She sighed heavily. "Amara, just promise me you'll be careful." I didn't answer, because careful was what had kept me trapped for years. Meanwhile, in his penthouse overlooking the city, Charles Remington poured himself another drink. His cheek twitched as his phone lit up with messages. His mother had called 3 times. His sister sent texts filled with fury. "What were you thinking?" But Charles just laughed. "She'll keep quiet," he told the empty room, voice slurred but confident. "She always does." He downed the drink and scrolled through his betting app, placing another reckless wager. The adrenaline dulled the sting of the night, drowned out the nagging voice of regret. He had wealth, power, and charm. What could Amara possibly do to him? Over the next few days, whispers turned into headlines. Remington as-wife causes a scene at gala. Did she push him too far? His family fed the press their side, painting me as unstable, dramatic, desperate for attention. The world believed them. Why wouldn't they? The Remington name was gold. Mine was dirt. But what none of them knew
was that I held a secret far more dangerous than any slap. Charles's addiction. The gambling debts, the dangerous loans, the late-night binges. I had the receipts, the calls, the hushed payments I had made from my own accounts just to keep his empire from collapsing. I had protected him, and in doing so, I had become the only person who knew just how fragile he really was. And if I wanted to, I could pull the mask right off his perfect face. That thought terrified me. It also thrilled me. That night, I sat with Naomi, telling her everything I had hidden for years. Her eyes widened with every detail. "Amara," she whispered, "if you expose this, it'll destroy him." "Good," I said, surprising even myself with the steel in my voice. Naomi stared at me, then nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time the world finally saw Charles Remington the way you did." But even as I spoke bravely, a voice inside me trembled. I had been silent for so long. Could I really do it? Could I bear the weight of revenge and the storm it would unleash? One thing was certain. I couldn't go back. Silence was no longer an option.
The universe has a cruel sense of humor. Just when I swore I'd never breathe the same air as Charles again, life shoved us into the same room. It happened 3 days after the gala. The Remington Foundation had partnered with the community arts program I ran, and as director, I couldn't avoid the upcoming showcase. Funding for 20 kids, paint supplies, workshops, even scholarships depended on my presence, which meant I had to attend planning meetings, which meant Charles would be there too. I considered backing out, but when I thought of the kids' faces, their excitement, their belief in something brighter, I knew I couldn't. I wouldn't let my personal hell rob them of their chance. So I walked into the Remington corporate offices with my head high and my stomach in knots. The building was glass and steel, gleaming like arrogance made solid. I signed in at the reception desk, feeling every eye turn toward me. Whispers trailed behind my back like smoke. That's her, the ex-wife, the one from the video. When the elevator doors opened to the top floor, Charles was already there, leaning against the conference room doorway as if he owned not just the building, but the air inside it. "Amara," he said smoothly, his lips curved in that practiced smile. "Didn't expect you'd have the courage to show up." I ignored him, brushing past into the conference room. The long mahogany table gleamed under fluorescent lights, and a dozen foundation members shuffled papers, pretending not to watch us. The meeting began. Numbers, sponsorships, schedules, all blurred as I felt Charles's gaze burn into me. He was performing, charming the board members, laughing too loud, making grand promises about the foundation's generosity. But beneath it all, I caught the tremors in his hand as he reached for water, the subtle way he shifted uncomfortably when his phone buzzed. I knew those tells. He was betting again, probably on a game he couldn't afford to lose. At one point, his phone slipped from his pocket, landing face up on the floor near me. The screen lit up. "Debt settlement due. Immediate response required." Our eyes met as I handed it back. For a fraction of a second, fear flickered in his gaze. Then he smirked. "Thanks, darling," he said, voice laced with condescension, as if to dare me to expose him. I said nothing, but my silence was no longer weakness. It was power. Later, after the meeting, I tried to leave quickly, but Charles intercepted me in the corridor. "You think you've got leverage?" he hissed, the mask slipping now that no one was watching. "You don't. You never did." I met his eyes. "The difference now, Charles, is I'm not afraid of you anymore." His jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might strike me again, even here. But he straightened, smoothing his jacket. "Careful, Amara. You think you can walk into my world and play games? But I built this empire. People will always believe me over you." I let a small smile curve my lips. "Maybe, but you and I both know the truth, and one day they will too." I walked away before he could respond, my heels echoing through the polished halls. My heart pounded, but it wasn't fear this time. It was the steady rhythm of resolution. That night, I replayed the encounter in my mind. his arrogance, his cracks, his desperation, and I realized something. Charles wasn't untouchable anymore. He was bleeding beneath the surface, and I held the knife that could cut him wide open. But part of me hesitated. Revenge was tempting, yes, but revenge was also dangerous. I knew once I started, there would be no turning back. Still, as I thought of the sting of his hand at the gala, the cold stares of his family, the years of silence I had endured, my hesitation began to harden into certainty. The cracks in Charles Remington's empire were spreading, and soon everyone would see the man behind the mask.
The past has a way of creeping back in, especially when you least want it to. After that tense meeting at the Remington offices, I couldn't sleep. The city lights glowed through my apartment window, but my mind was trapped in shadows of years gone by. I thought of the first time I realized Charles's addiction wasn't just a bad habit. It was 2 years into our marriage. He came home late, shirt wrinkled, tie loose, smelling of whiskey and sweat. I'd been waiting up, worried. When he finally stumbled in, his eyes were wild, manic, like a man chasing ghosts. "I just need one more," he muttered, pacing the living room. "One more game, one more bet. I can flip it, I swear." I tried to calm him. "Charles, please. It's 3 a.m. Come to bed. We can figure this out tomorrow." But he snapped, eyes narrowing at me. "You don't understand. You never understand. This is how men like me win." The next day, I found out he had lost nearly $500,000 in a single night. Money that wasn't his alone. Money tied up in the Remington Trust. I should have walked then. I should have run. Instead, I became his shield. I made quiet phone calls. I begged lenders for time. I liquidated part of my inheritance, my grandmother's jewelry, the savings my parents had left me, just to cover his tracks. I told myself it was love, that marriage meant sacrifice, that if I just helped him through this dark season, we'd come out stronger. But the dark season never ended. It wasn't long before the first bruise appeared. Not on purpose, he swore. He was drunk, frustrated, angry at himself, not me. He begged for forgiveness, promised it would never happen again. And I wanted so badly to believe him that I let myself believe. Until it happened again. And again. Each time, I wore longer sleeves, heavier makeup, quieter words. Each time, I told myself he needed me. Each time, I felt myself shrinking. And yet through it all, I still managed his demons. I was the one who smoothed over meetings when his temper flared. I was the one who answered calls from creditors in the middle of the night. I was the one who paid debts from my own accounts so the Remington name stayed clean. I was his lifeline. And in return, he dragged me under with him. The memory cut sharp as glass, and I grabbed my journal from the nightstand, flipping through pages I hadn't touched in years. Notes, receipts, phone records, all tucked away like a trail of breadcrumbs. I had kept everything, even when I didn't know why. Now I did. Naomi came over the next day. When I showed her the files, her hand flew to her mouth. "Amara, this is enough to ruin him. If you release this, no one will ever look at him the same way again." I stared at the pile of evidence, my chest tight. Do you know how many times I told myself I was protecting him for love? How many times I thought he'd change if I just carried enough of his burden? It all did was break me. Naomi's voice softened. "So maybe it's time to stop protecting him. Maybe it's time to protect yourself." Her words lingered long after she left. That night, sleep finally came, but it carried me into another memory, one I had buried deep. The night Charles first hit me in front of someone else. We had been at a dinner with his business partners. He drank too much, laughed too loud, and when I gently touched his arm, asking him to slow down, he turned on me. The back of his hand connected with my face under the tablecloth. No one else seemed to notice. Or maybe they pretended not to. I sat there frozen, my face stinging, while he carried on his story as though nothing had happened.
That was the night I learned silence was expected. His silence, my silence, the silence of everyone around us. But silence no longer served me. I woke with tears on my cheeks and fire in my chest. For the first time, I felt no shame in remembering. The shame wasn't mine to carry. It never was. Charles had taken so much from me, my voice, my dignity, my years. But he had also given me the very weapon I needed, knowledge of who he truly was. And now, I knew what I had to do. If you had years of evidence against someone who had hurt you, would you use it for revenge, or would you walk away to start fresh? Tell me in the comments which path you'd choose.
After weeks of drowning in memories and plotting revenge, I didn't expect light to find me in the quietest of places. The community center's art studio smelled faintly of paint and clay, sunlight streaming through the tall windows onto canvases in progress. It was the one place where I still felt whole, among the children sketching dreams onto paper, their laughter unscarred by the weight of the world. That's where I met Elias Calderon. He wasn't like the men I'd known in Charles's circle. No tailored suits, no air of entitlement. He wore rolled-up sleeves splattered with paint, his dark hair a little too long, his smile easy but not careless. He had been hired to help lead the sculpture program, and the kids adored him instantly. I watched as he crouched beside a shy boy, guiding his hands gently over wet clay. "There's no wrong way to shape it," he said warmly. "Just let your hands tell the story your heart's too shy to say." The boy's face lit up. Mine did too, though I tried to hide it. Later, Elias approached me while I was organizing supplies. "You're Amara, right? The director?" His voice carried a hint of respect, not the patronizing tone I was used to hearing from Charles's world. "Yes," I said, offering a cautious smile. He continued, "I've heard a lot about this program. The kids talk about you like you hung the moon. You should see their faces when they walk in here. It's because of what you built." The compliment caught me off guard. For years, I had been told I wasn't enough, that everything I did was flawed. Hearing the opposite felt strange, almost dangerous. "Thank you," I murmured, busying myself with brushes to hide the heat in my cheeks. Over the next few weeks, our paths crossed often. He made the kids laugh, told stories about sculpting from scraps when he was younger, and even teased me gently when I worked too hard. One afternoon, as I stayed late cleaning up, Elias leaned against the doorway. "You know, you don't always have to carry everything alone." I froze, the weight of his words hitting deeper than he could have known. "I'm not carrying everything," I said too quickly. He raised an eyebrow, his eyes kind but knowing. "I've seen people who try to shoulder the world. Their backs always give out eventually. You don't strike me as someone who should break herself for others." For a moment, I wanted to tell him everything. About Charles, about the slap, about the addiction, the years of silence, the revenge forming like a storm inside me. But the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I whispered, "Sometimes carrying is the only way to survive." He didn't press, just nodded. "Then, at least let someone help you lift it." Something in my chest ached, in the best and worst way. Meanwhile, Charles's world was unraveling. Late-night calls from creditors grew louder. His bets grew riskier, his charms stretched thinner. The video from the gala still circulated. Forwarded me a news article. "Is Charles Remington's empire crumbling?" I read it twice, a quiet satisfaction blooming in my chest. He was spiraling, and this time, I wasn't there to catch him. Back at the studio, Elias and I sat side by side, helping the kids clean their brushes. He told me about his mother, a seamstress who worked her fingers raw to put him through school. His voice softened when he spoke of her, reverence in every word. She used to tell me, "Don't let the world make you cruel, even when it hurts you. Don't let it change who you are." I looked at him, really looked at him. His life hadn't been gilded like Charles's, but there was strength in him. Strength without arrogance, without cruelty. "What if the world already made me cruel?" I asked quietly. Elias turned to me, his gaze steady. "Then maybe it's time to remember who you were before." The words lodged in my heart. For the first time in years, I laughed.
Not the polite, hollow laugh I used to offer at Charles's parties, but a real laugh, light and unguarded. Elias smiled at the sound as if he'd been waiting for it. That night, I went home with a strange warmth in my chest. For so long, my life had been about survival, enduring Charles, hiding his secrets, carrying shame. But maybe, just maybe, there was more waiting for me. Not just revenge, not just survival. Possibly love.
It was supposed to be a night of celebration. The youth showcase had finally arrived, the culmination of months of work. The community center buzzed with excitement, parents and donors milling about as the children beamed beside their artwork. Paintings, sculptures, and collages lined the walls, each piece a story of resilience, color splashed against struggle. I wore a simple dress, not glamorous, but proud. This wasn't about me, it was about them. But I should have known Charles wouldn't let me have peace. He arrived late, swaggering into the center with his entourage of board members and his ever-watchful sister Victoria. His smile was fixed, but his eyes betrayed the same feverish gleam I knew too well. Too many drinks, too many bets, too much desperation. "Amara," he drawled, loud enough for the room to hear. "Still playing teacher, I see. Isn't it sweet, like dressing up poverty with crayons?" Conversation stilled. Heads turned. Heat flushed my cheeks, but I forced my voice steady. "This program changes lives, Charles. Something your money could never buy." His jaw tightened. He stepped closer, invading my space, his whisper hot against my ear, though everyone could hear the venom. "Don't forget who made you. Without me, you're nothing. A charity case pretending to be important." I held my ground, but before I could respond, Elias stepped forward. "Back off," Elias said, his tone calm but firm. "This isn't your stage tonight. Let the kids shine." The room buzzed with whispers. Charles's face flushed crimson, his pride bruised at being challenged by a man he deemed beneath him. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "And who are you? Another stray she picked up? Careful, friend, she will bleed you dry like she tried with me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My heart dropped. Elias's face hardened, but his eyes flicked toward me, searching, questioning. And in that instant, Charles delivered the final blow. He raised his voice so the whole room could hear. "Ask her what she did for me, Elias. Ask how many debts she paid. Ask how many nights she covered my shame. She'll tell you she's strong, but she's addicted to broken men. She needs us to feel needed." The words pierced deeper than any slap. The room felt smaller, suffocating. I could see the doubt flicker in Elias's eyes. Not judgment, but confusion, hurt. He didn't know the years of torment behind those words, only that Charles had planted a seed of doubt in front of everyone. I couldn't breathe. "Elias," I started, desperate to explain, but my voice cracked. He shook his head gently, not in rejection, but in retreat. "Amara, maybe tonight isn't the time." His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of distance. And just like that, the fragile bond I had begun to build crumbled. Charles smirked, victorious in his cruelty. He basked in the silence, in the stares, in the way the moment had shifted. He had dragged me back into the shadows where he believed I belonged. I stood frozen, shame burning hot across my skin. Not just shame for what he had said, but shame for how much of it was true. I had carried him, enabled him, hidden him. And now exposed in front of the one man who made me feel seen, I felt small again. I excused myself quietly, leaving the showcase to Naomi's capable hands. My legs felt heavy as I walked into the night air, my chest hollow. Alone again. At home, I sank to the floor clutching the journal of evidence I had collected against Charles. My tears fell onto its pages. Was this who I would always be? The woman who endured in silence? The woman who carried men until she broke?
the woman who let shame define her. For years, I had believed revenge would free me. But tonight, all it had brought me was more pain, more loss, more proof that Charles Remington still had the power to poison everything good in my life. Elias had offered me kindness, a glimpse of something real, and Charles had taken it from me before it could even bloom. The thought clawed at me. Maybe I wasn't worthy of love. Maybe Charles was right. Maybe broken men were all I would ever know. And for the first time in years, I doubted not just my strength, but my worth. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one thought echoed louder than the rest. Charles Remington had destroyed me in private. Now, he had destroyed me in public again. And I couldn't decide if revenge would save me or finish me.
The night after the showcase felt like drowning. My apartment was too quiet, my phone too loud with unanswered texts from Naomi. I hadn't heard from Elias since he walked away, and his absence pressed against me like a second skin. Charles's voice echoed in my head. "She's addicted to broken men. She needs us to feel needed." I hated how much it hurt, not because it was true, but because part of me feared it was. I stood at the window, staring at the city lights, and asked myself the question I had avoided for years. Who am I when I'm not someone's shield? I opened the journal again, spreading its contents across the coffee table. Receipts, loan slips, phone records, proof of every debt Charles had racked up, every desperate gamble, every time I had saved him from ruin. My hands trembled as I picked up a stack of papers. This was my weapon, my revenge. If I sent it to the right journalist, if I leaked it to the press, Charles's empire would crumble. His family's name would splinter. He would know what it felt like to be exposed, to be humiliated, to be powerless. But another voice inside whispered, "And then what? Would exposing him heal me? Would it bring back the years he stole, the love he shattered, the dignity he burned away with every slap, every lie, every bruise?" I pressed my hands to my face, tears sliding between my fingers. The weight of choice was suffocating. I thought of Elias, his gentle words, his belief that I didn't need to carry the world alone. And then I thought of the look in his eyes when Charles's poison had reached him, the flicker of doubt, the silent retreat. Did I still have a chance to show him who I really was, or had Charles's shadow already consumed me? I poured a glass of water, sat at the table, and forced myself to list the truths I had buried. I am not the sum of Charles's debts. I am not the bruises he gave me. I am not the silence his family demanded. I am not the shame they tried to paint on me. I said them out loud, my voice trembling but growing stronger with each word. Then I looked down at the evidence again. This wasn't just revenge. This was truth. And truth had power. But truth also had cost. Once I released it, I could never take it back. It would scorch everything in its path, not just Charles, but his family, his reputation, his legacy. And it might scorch me too, branding me forever as the ex-wife who brought him down. Could I live with that? I paced the apartment, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. Every path stretched before me like a double-edged sword. If I stayed silent, Charles would continue. He would hurt others, ruin others, and the world would keep believing his lies. If I spoke, I might lose Elias for good. I might lose any chance of a quiet life free of headlines. But I would win something else, myself. I stopped pacing and stood still, letting the silence press in. For once, I didn't run from it. I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who laughed easily, who painted late into the night, who dreamed of teaching children to see beauty where others saw nothing. That girl deserved better, and so did the woman I had become. I gathered the papers into neat stacks. My tears had dried. In their place was steel. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It wasn't even about Charles. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, my truth. Charles Remington had taken years of my life, but he would not take the rest. I whispered into the quiet room as if the city itself needed to hear it. This ends with me. Somewhere across town, Charles sat in a casino suite, whiskey in hand, surrounded by people who laughed too easily at his jokes. But his eyes darted to his phone every few seconds, to messages from collectors, to articles questioning his empire. He was slipping, and deep down, he knew it. And soon, he would know why. The morning I decided to send everything, the sky was the color of slate, heavy, gray, expectant. I walked to the mailbox with the envelope in my hand, my fingers trembling but steady enough to drop it in. Inside were copies of every receipt, every loan, every frantic payment I had made to cover Charles's debts. I had addressed it to a journalist Naomi trusted, a woman who never flinched from powerful men. As the envelope disappeared into the slot, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. It was done. The fallout came quickly. Within days, headlines screamed the truth. Gambling addiction at the heart of Remington Empire. Millions in hidden debts uncovered. Philanthropy funded by fraud. Charles denied it at first. He called it lies from a bitter ex-wife. His family released statements about my emotional instability. But the documents were irrefutable. The numbers didn't lie. Board members resigned. Investors pulled out. The Remington name, once gold-plated, was tarnished. And for the first time in years, the world looked at Charles Remington and saw not a polished millionaire, but a man drowning in his own vices. He called me once. Just once. His voice on the line was slurred, tired. "Amara, why? After everything I gave you?" I closed my eyes, the memory of his hand across my cheek flashing through me, the humiliation in that ballroom, the years of silence. "You didn't give me anything, Charles," I said softly. "You took, and you thought I'd never stop letting you. But you were wrong." I hung up before he could respond. It felt like closing a book. The gala of the following year was different. This time, it was for the community art program, hosted in the very ballroom where Charles had struck me. The chandeliers glittered, but the air felt warmer, freer. Guests smiled for the kids' artwork, not for society gossip. As I stood by a display of sculptures, I felt someone at my side. Elias. For weeks, I hadn't known if he would come back. After Charles's cruel words, after the doubt in his eyes, I'd prepared myself for silence. But here he was, standing close, his expression open, searching. "I read the articles," he said quietly. "I'm sorry I doubted you." I swallowed hard. Charles has a way of twisting the truth. I didn't want you to see me through his lies. Elias shook his head gently. "I see you now, all of you, and you're stronger than anyone I've ever met." Tears pricked my eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. "Elias!" Before I could say more, applause rippled through the ballroom as a young girl stepped up to the microphone to thank the donors. Her voice was nervous, but bright. "I want to say thank you to Miss Amara. You showed me I could be more than my mistakes. You showed me that broken things can still be beautiful." The room clapped, but in that moment, I heard only my own heartbeat. Elias reached for my hand. I let him. Across town, Charles sat alone in a penthouse that once buzzed with parties. The curtains were drawn, the whiskey bottle half empty on the table beside him. His phone buzzed with unanswered calls, lawyers, creditors, reporters, but he ignored them all. He stared at the television replaying footage from the gala, his ex-wife standing tall in the very place he had once humiliated her. And for the first time in his life, Charles Remington felt something money couldn't buy back: regret. As the night of the gala wound down, I stood in that ballroom and let the memory of the slap from a year ago flicker through my mind. I touched my cheek briefly, then let my hand fall. That humiliation had been my breaking point. Tonight, this place was my rebirth. I turned to Elias, who smiled as if he understood without words,
And for the first time in years, I believed in tomorrow. Charles Remington had his wealth, but I had my freedom, my dignity, my future. And that was a far greater fortune than his money could ever buy. Amara chose truth over silence, revenge that set her free instead of chaining her down. If you were in her place, would you have done the same or walked away without looking back? Share your heart in the comments.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you loved this story, you will definitely love the next one. It's more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So go ahead and watch it now. Click on the image on your screen right away to watch the next one. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It helps and encourages us to share the best human interest stories you'd love.